That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights on, Ms. Tesserman, your light's off? Okay. I don't see any other questions or comments. Does everyone understand the motion on the floor? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries.
(11A) is a resolution supporting the pursuit of partnerships to address mental health, substance abuse, and behavioral health needs in Knoxville, including a local long-term psychiatric hospitalization unit with the intention of serving low-income and uninsured individuals, and the provision of matching funds to support the development of a business and service delivery plan for alternative response services.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Council members, there are 3 people signed up to speak in favor of this, and more than 3 signed up to speak in opposition. We'll start with those in favor. First is Ms. Vivian Shipe. Ms. Shipe, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Vivian Shipe, 3615 Martin Luther King Avenue, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919. When I called in to sign up for this, I couldn't exactly describe how I was going to speak about this when they asked me for again. So today I'm coming forward because I wanted to come and talk to you about having each other's six. I want to speak on loyalty and cooperation, and I'm here to speak about collaboration. Let's say that you have 2 boxes in front of you. One of the boxes is beautiful, much like you're always used to seeing. The other box is uniquely different. Its corners are not rounded off. The paper is not anything like you've ever seen. Unknown to you, the better gift is inside the box that is different, but you have continually chosen to stay in the lane of the boxes that you're used to. And as the contents have been unfurled to you, you look with regret back at what you have seen and at what you have passed by. This is the scenario that I have been witnessing over and over with this council. A perfect example is the resolution brought to you by Ms. Parker. Now, instead of backing it and tweaking a perfectly solid resolution, you come up with another. This must stop. Parker has an excellent, and she's been an excellent, and I hope she will be for the future, a council member. She has repeatedly offered you wonderful suggestions for this city only to be shot down. As a result, time is wasted that could be better used by bringing to life projects that will help those that you were put in office to serve. I am here tonight to support the resolution Amelia Parker has already presented. It is a good one. And if we would please stop creating alliances and start working collectively, you would serve much better the people that you were elected to serve. We do not need another resolution. We need resolve. It is time to resolve to start working together for the greater good of those that you were sent here to serve. You see, collaboration works.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak to this item is Ben Harrington. Mr. Harrington, if you could state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ben Harrington. I am the CEO of the Mental Health Association of East Tennessee, and the address is 9050 Executive Park Drive, 37923. You know, that's a challenge following Ms. Vivian. She's awesome. I'm here to support Resolution 11A, and I will tell you why. Any opportunity to advance what we do in our community to support the needs of persons with mental illness is a good one. And COVID-19 doubled the number of people in our community who need mental health care. And it hasn't gone backwards. It hasn't abated, even though COVID did abate. And so we are challenged even further today with more and more people seeking mental health care, and also the challenges of a behavioral health workforce shortage, which when we deal with all of that, sometimes we're going to end up with people who have a crisis, have a more emergent need, and may also become in contact with our law enforcement community. As such, we need to advance our mental health system in a positive way, and that is why I am supportive of Resolution 11A, because it builds on existing partnerships that we have in our community. It builds on the existing successes that we have in our community, and I can elaborate on a number of them. My career is 29 years, and one of the things that makes me most proud is I stood with the community when we needed to reform police training back in 1998. In those days, it clearly told every officer that was going through the recruit school that everyone with a mental illness was psychopathic or sociopathic. We got the opportunity to meet with the mayor, Mayor Ash, and we changed that. And that built a long-standing partnership that has led to many advances in mental health in our community, and interventions with the criminal justice system that's built the CSU, that's helped build the BHUC. And Miss Vivian was there with me when it opened. We were proud to support that. And we were proud to support the advancement of the co-response model that is operated by KPD and McNabb Center, which is stellar, by the way. And so building on all of that is a tremendous opportunity for the community, and a tremendous opportunity for the city and its mental health providers, public and private, and it's an opportunity to build greater partnerships. I do want to point out something in the resolution that I think is very important. It's right in the middle, and it says, whereas City Council supports a multi-jurisdictional effort to explore how an alternate response program could serve the greater Knoxville community with rapid on-site crisis response that is integrated with 911 dispatch. That is extremely important to me because it leaves this door open to explore exactly how the community can benefit, the ways in which we need to improve mental health services for our community, and that's all members of our community. And it allows us to dig deep to the data which we know is already helping drive and shape this conversation. That co-response unit that KPD and McNabb operates is stellar. There are multiple programs across the country that fit the model of a co-response or a alternate response model. The Denver program is outstanding. It's called STARS. There is a Nashville program that is similar to what, excuse
Hey,
me.
please do not interrupt the speakers, or you may be asked to
Thank you.
leave.
There is a Nashville program that is similar in design to what is articulated in this resolution. And there are probably other models that are worthy of exploration. And that is what I would hope to see would happen if this resolution were passed and we had the opportunity to work together as a community and explore all of our options and all of our needs to advance mental health services in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak in favor of 11A is Parker Bartholomew. Mr. Bartholomew, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Parker Bartholomew, Chairman of Angelic Ministries, 1218 North Central Street, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37917. Angelic Ministries serves over 20,000 individuals a year during their time of crisis. In many cases, mental health challenges are the root of the problem. This requires agencies all working together. Some of those that work include the McNabb Center, VMC, CARM, Cherokee Health, CAC, CareCuts, KCDC, KLF, Mobile Crisis, the City of Knoxville, Knox County, not to mention the hundreds of churches and thousands of volunteers. To say this is a complex problem is an understatement. Dealing with mental health challenges require not only immediate needs, but also lifelong and generational challenges. Challenges that the individual can control and challenges that are a product of their surroundings. Challenges that can be dealt with by the individual and challenges that can be dealt with only by society. Some require short-term solutions and others require treatment for the rest of their lives. If Angelic tried to solve the mental health, substance abuse, affordable housing, homelessness, and families in crisis by ourselves, we would be an utter failure. All of these things are a product of the mental health crisis that we have in our society right now. It requires many organizations working together in love and respect. It requires a public and private partnership, and it requires flexibility. In all of these challenges, what works for one does not work for all. As I read through the resolution, it tries to show just how complicated this problem is. It includes multiple departments from the state of Tennessee, Knox County, the city of Knoxville, and then it includes private and public organizations. Surely we can all agree that if the city tries to do this alone, it'll be a complete failure, just like if Angelic was to do it alone. To solve this problem, it will require a coalition of organizations. Of all three resolutions that are presented this evening, this is the one that is best at creating those coalitions to solve this problem while not placing blame. We all are responsible for this mental health crisis that we're dealing with. Pointing fingers will not only solve the problem, but it will make it harder to create the partnerships that are needed to solve it. I'm encouraged to see that the state, county, city, and local nonprofits are working together. Can we do better? Of course we can. We are working in the right direction and we must do more. We are using evidence-based research to adapt and improve. The city passing this resolution tonight shows its commitment to continue to deal with the mental health crisis and encourage involvement from the organizations that must work together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the first person signed up to speak in opposition to 11A is Moira Connolly. Ms. Connolly? Is Ms. Connolly here? There you are. If you can state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Moira Connolly. I live at 5726 Briscoe Circle in Knoxville. As I start, I would like to call everyone's attention to an opinion piece that appeared in the Knox News Sentinel this afternoon. It has a lot of really good background on this situation. It's by Imani Mfalme, and it's called The Call for Alternative Response in Knoxville, City Co-op's Community Plan. So that's got a lot of good information in it, too. We are in an unfortunate situation this evening of having dueling resolutions. And the reason we're here is because we have someone who has not sort of acted in an equitable and dignified and caring way to either the community or I would say to his colleagues. So when Councilmember Roberto came up with this resolution, he slammed with great surprise the group of people who have been working on the one part of his resolution for 3 years in the city of Knoxville. In addition, he had a colleague who had made a resolution, and then in consideration of the feedback that she had received from her colleagues on council, had decided to postpone that in an effort to receive feedback and then bring back an updated resolution for people to be able to view. So in the time that Councilmember Parker had moved her resolution, our group, Knoxville Heart, spent hours and hours reaching out to different council members. We got feedback. We had probably 3 to 5 different possible resolutions that we were going to bring back, that we were shopping around to each other, to other community members, to different council members. We never got an opportunity to do that before Councilmember Roberto just came out with his resolution. So this is partly a means and an ends situation. So I have a lot of problems with the means. This resolution is also problematic in its ends, okay? So what happens here is that we end up with a kitchen sink resolution, is what I would call it. So I understand what the previous gentleman was saying about we have a lot of complicated things that need to be working together, groups and people that all need to work together, but not in a mishmash, all right? So what we have in the resolution that Councilmember Roberto put forward is several different items that are not fleshed out to be full enough for any one of them to actually be implementable, okay? So we have this idea of a psychiatric hospitalization unit. Years, right? We're talking years and years. How many studies does it take to get that done, right? Then even when Councilmember Roberto does, give a nod to what community members have been working on for 3 years, the alternative response, we just see the dollar amount, which is wonderful. But Councilmember Parker has had a task force, and her new resolution tonight calls for public hearing. Where's the policy piece? Someone's going to write us a check, but what are you going to do with the check? Who's going to talk about the check? Where are you going to get the community members to make the decision about how the check is going to be used in terms of programmatic manner? So we have here before us, I would argue, a very problematic resolution in both how it was created and delivered to the public and in what it contains. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Rick Roach. Rick Roach, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 5 minutes.
Rick Roach, Knoxville. I'd like to ask one question. Why? Although I was raised to never question people's motive, just look at what they do. This resolution speaks for itself. That's why I'm in opposition to it. Volunteering in the healthcare area on the consumer side for a few years, sitting before mental health officials, social workers, everyone else. It always boiled down to one thing, and that was commitment and prioritization. State of Tennessee, 2010, the ACA was passed. State of Tennessee still has not done Medicaid expansion. So you want to work with the state? That's who you're going to be working with. That's who you say you're going to be working with. First budget that our county mayor put up could cut plenty of areas, but the first place he cut on his proposed budget was indigent care. So what are we going to do here, people? Now, I'm going to say this. I've kind of been on the outside looking in, but I've been on the inside looking out too on this whole process, especially since May 30th. And there's some backstabbing, low down, closet dealing stuff that no public official should be engaged in. That's right. You have misinformed and gotten backing for your resolution. You got people sitting here, now they're listening, okay, because they found out you didn't tell them the whole story. Okay? They're just listening now. Well, y'all need to hear it. You're dealing with someone who is not forthcoming. That's right. Okay? That's that. Now, all this little drama that's been going on back and forth, where Hart has dealt with you guys sincerely. I don't have much respect for most of you right now. Okay? Because of the way things go down. This is not politics anymore. This is about people getting assistance when they need it so that they can survive. Because we're talking survival. We're at the basic level of survival right now. Okay? That's where most people are at right now. And if you guys don't get it, then you need to get out. You need to walk away. Give it up. Because you're not doing the city of Knoxville any good. Okay? Quit trying to create a scenario where we're going to get our way no matter what, and we'll do whatever we have to do it, to get it. That time is over with. Okay? It's over with. You need to stop.
Okay, the third speaker signed up to speak on this is Ms. Tina Sparks. Ms. Sparks, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Tina Sparks, but I'm not going to talk, so don't start the clock. I'm going to yield my time to Amelia because she is a professional in this, and you need to listen to her. Put down your phones, put down your devices, look at her, and listen to her. You'll have a time to hear me when I come up to speak in favor of Miss Parker. And in the public forum, if anybody is still around here to listen to me. But right now, please listen to
Ms.
her.
Sparks, the rules of council, you've signed up to speak, and you can use your time. If council wants to suspend their rules, they may, but you have your allotted time. It's not
Mayor,
council rules.
point of
to-
order. I believe at the beginning of this, you asked all speakers to gather in the back of the room, determine
Stop the clock.
who would speak,
Stop the clock.
and I believe they're just following your instructions.
Okay, so this will be the third and final speaker. Okay. Go ahead.
She needs 5 minutes.
Go ahead.
She needs 5 minutes.
Okay, Amelia James. I live in North Knoxville. So obviously I'm signed up today to speak against this resolution, and I want to say that in general, I'm not opposed to a lot of the content in it, but I am opposed to the fact that it is lacking a vital component, which is community involvement. So this resolution was written without any community involvement, including no involvement from Knoxville Heart, who has been doing this work for 3 years. Additionally, there is nothing in the resolution that makes clear that community input is vital to the formation of an alternative response team. Now, I'm guessing Councilmember Roberto will say, oh, I did have community involvement, but meeting with CEOs or higher ups of 1 or 2 mental health agencies is not community involvement. When we talk about community involvement, we're talking about people with lived experience, and that is missing from this resolution. So I wanted to share an example from my own life that illustrates how important community buy-in is. I moved to Knoxville 5 years ago to start the behavioral health program at a nonprofit, which serves a very specific population. And this population has experienced tremendous amounts of oppression from the US government, healthcare professionals, the legal system, and law enforcement. When I was hired, most of my clients were highly skeptical of me. They had no reason to trust me. I worked tremendously hard to gain their trust, and it was a really long process. Now, 5 years later, I have clients that I see every week who I've seen for 4 or 5 years, and that never would have happened if I hadn't invested the time to gain that trust of this community that I serve. Programs like Alternative Response fail when they are created without community input, and when those alternative response teams are not directed and staffed by people who truly understand the values of alternative response. This program will fail if we do not center people with lived experience along with professionals who truly understand the work. My hope is that you all will amend this bill to include community involvement and support Councilmember Parker's bill, which centers community input. Those 2 actions that you all can take tonight will go a long way to repairing the trust that was broken with how this bill was presented. Now, in general, in past conversations and meetings, I've heard 2 main concerns about alternative response in general that I wanted to address. The first concern is that, these alternative response teams would go out and respond to people in crisis, and then they won't have a place to take them, hence the inclusion of the psychiatric hospital in this resolution. This represents a significant misunderstanding of alternative response teams and honestly treats them like a glorified taxi service. Alternative response teams are able to de-escalate, treat, and support people in the community, which follows behavioral health guidelines of maintaining people at the lowest possible level of care. The assumption that all or even most people in crisis need psychiatric hospitalization is incorrect. In my 5 years of working with a highly vulnerable, often unhoused population, I have only had 3 instances where I felt a client immediately needed a psychiatric assessment at the hospital. 3 people in 5 years. This is hundreds of clients. Because when we have behavioral health professionals and medics who have the skills to offer proper support in the community, people are often able to stay where they are safely. That is what this program, that's what alternative response is all about. The other concern that's been raised by Councilmember Ryder and potentially others is that we will struggle to staff an alternative response team. The fact that we can't fully staff co-response says much more about the co-response model than anything else. Maybe behavioral health professionals don't want to work alongside police. Maybe the offered salary is an insult to people with a master's level degree. I personally know medics and behavioral health professionals in this community who are exhausted by working within our current system and would jump at an opportunity to be part of an alternative response team. I can also say that Knoxville can be at the cutting edge of doing something creative. I moved to Knoxville 5 years ago after 7 years away from this state because I had the opportunity to work in a nonprofit that supported my values and with a population that I care about. I have absolutely no doubt that we will be able to staff these teams and we'll have so many people who want to work at them. So please do the right thing tonight, repair some of the trust with community, amend this bill and support Councilmember Parker's bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Roberto.
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the questions that was asked is why bring this? And I'm just not going to sit back and watch more time go by when we have a very important thing that we need to do. And in the meeting 4 weeks ago, I laid out and said we need to amend this so that we can make this work. I want this to work. I think a lot of you in the audience here and at home want this to work. That's what this is about. This resolution is not about names on a piece of paper. It's about a path to success to get us where we're trying to go. The resolution is ultimately at its core about people, very vulnerable people who are in crisis, who need access to care in our community. I want anyone who's listening, maybe watching at home, if you are experiencing a crisis or you know someone who is and you need assistance, you can call 988 to get connected with care. I think that's really important for this discussion today because I think there's a lot of people listening and there's a way to deal with this. Council is working now on this right now to provide more access to opportunities for you to get care. But in the meantime, that's where you need to go. I also want to take a minute and acknowledge the work that Hart has done as a champion for an alternative response team's creation in our community, launching these efforts several years ago, and I applaud their efforts in moving this forward. I want also to take some time to talk about what Council has done. So we have taken action to address needs in our community. And part of this discussion needs to be about those things that we've already done, as well as what we're committing to do in this resolution. First, I want to highlight the Behavioral Health Urgent Care Center, the BHUC. That has diverted over 2,000 individuals away from our judicial system, providing compassionate, community-based care since 2018. We have also heard mentioning of the co-response team. That pairs a master's level clinician with a crisis intervention team-trained KPD officer to respond to 911 calls. In nearly 3 years of existence, this team has responded to over 2,500 calls. 40% have been transported to the ER, and 50% of those callers were able to remain in place and linked to resources they needed. Just highlighting the vulnerability of what we're talking about tonight, a third of those callers were experiencing suicidal ideation. Council has also approved the Emergency Psychiatric Assessment, Treatment, and Healing, or EMPATH. That facility will open at the former St. Mary's campus in 2024. This facility will also be a diversion, but this time diverting people who are in mental health or substance abuse. They need that care away from the ER and linking them with the care that they need, where it's more appropriate because they can't necessarily be properly diagnosed or cared for in that environment. Each of these programs and many others, which I won't have time to get into today, are the result of partnerships between the city, the county, and the state, just like is proposed in this resolution. This resolution seeks to expand those partnerships and complete the continuum of care by doing several important things. First, provide local, long-term psychiatric hospitalization unit or units to serve low-income or uninsured individuals. That is really critical. Second is developing a professional business and service delivery plan for an alternative response program pairing a medic with a crisis worker to respond to 911 calls that don't need the presence of a police officer. This will divert individuals in crisis away from our judicial system and get them the care and the access to services they require. This resolution moves forward by committing to host a joint workshop with County Commission to review the findings of the sequential intercept mapping exercise and discuss gaps in our current system. Council, in our retreat several years ago, had a discussion about a lot of the challenges that we are seeing and how we want to be able to help. The city has the smallest budget of all of these groups that we're talking about. And we partner with these partners, the county and the state, to provide this kind of care. What council asked in that was to have a joint workshop with the city, the county, and our state representatives. And that meeting was historic. I can't think of a time that's ever happened. And we did it, and it was on this topic. This is seeking to build on that momentum, to build on what we've already been doing, and to accomplish this. It's my goal to strengthen and build up the necessary coalition to complete the continuum of care, a goal that I think everyone in our city shares, and I think everyone on council supports, and I hope my colleagues will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith? Councilmember Parker?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I am very grateful for these conversations. Even when we do not agree, identifying what issues we do not agree on moves us closer to finding agreement. And so, although I was a little taken aback by the Vice Mayor's resolution being introduced, at least I was able to see what arguments were being made, regarding alternative response. And I sent out some texts to my colleagues, and I sent an email to my contact list very, very close to the start of this meeting, so many people may not have seen it. But I did have some concerns about how the resolution introduced by the Vice Mayor is framed, and a couple of different sections of it. For me, this conversation began in 2020, and that this is a continuation of conversations that we began in 2020. And when we, when I initially brought a proposal forward for an alternative response team, or discussions around it, it was during a period of time when cities throughout the country were looking to adopt reforms to their policing practices. Here in Knoxville, it's hard to even imagine, but if you look back at our agenda in 2020, we had a workshop just about every other week. And I think we actually had a workshop every other week during the summer of 2020, focused on reimagining policing. And one of the things that we was looking at was what are the calls we could potentially divert away from KPD. We looked at, what calls 911 was handling, et cetera. And we were looking at, calls about a suspicious person. We were looking at calls that in the past have led to violent interactions between police officers and community members that were unnecessary. Not that there is a time when violent interactions are necessary, but these were unnecessary interactions, and those calls could have been responded to by a non-police person. That's where we began with this conversation of an alternative response. And then those conversations ended and a conversation about co-responder began. And we haven't had a chance to return to that conversation. So in my proposal that I brought on May 30th, I identify homelessness, substance use, and mental health as 3 of the broad categories that would be addressed by an alternative response team. Thinking back to the summer of 2022, when these conversations began and we were talking about suspicious persons. In my opinion, that's included under a public health emergency, because a lot of those calls are resulting from community members who are uncomfortable, sometimes just with unknown persons in their community, but quite often those are Black people. Quite often those calls are made on Black members of our community. And so that's another public health emergency that we're experiencing, is when we have individuals in our community whose lives are in danger because of how they're experiencing racism in communities. So that initial conversation around those concerning interactions between police and community members in 2020, continuing on that conversation around homelessness and the KPD's involvement with our community of folks experiencing homelessness, and then expanding that conversation into mental illness, is where I see this conversation going. But unfortunately, the resolution we have before us from the Vice Mayor limits that conversation back down to only mental health.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. We can come back to you later. I think Councilmember Smith was next.
Thank you. I actually think both resolutions have some merit. And there's a lot of part. I think most of them I agree with both. I think Vice Mayor's resolution is good because it is a reflection of the broad continuum required to address any of the 3 buckets that Councilman Parker that you mentioned, or one. But all of those agencies play a role. It takes all of those things. It takes all the different models for how we care for those. So I think it's an accurate view of the comprehensive nature that is required to move the needle on this issue. I also appreciate Councilman Parker's resolution that it's acutely focused on alternative response and not waiting for the overall solution to be had. So I think I may be alone in this, but I think both A and C, I might be getting my numbers wrong, but I think both A and C are worthy of support. I also think that there's a certain aspect of community input that is just consistent and valued and obvious to anybody paying attention to this matter. So I think there's merit for both of these. I want to talk about the ends here just for a second, just a sidestep about there are no saints here. And so the idea of questioning motives about where resolutions come from or who should have brought one to where, I think is just genuinely not helpful. I think if you look at how things get done here in this body, it's messy, it's never neat. And if folks felt surprised by Vice Mayor's resolution, then I would say I felt surprised by some resolutions recently related to this topic too, and nobody engaged me quietly and thoughtfully to get my take on anything before it started. So we all live in glass houses, and so what I would ask is that our entire community focus on the substance of the thing we're trying to solve, rather than the sequence of which things are brought to different people. So I just don't think that conversation is helpful. But I do think the merit, which I think is where this actually moves the needle, of both A and C are good. To the extent we merge the two, or to the extent there's pieces of each that get merged, I think I'm happy with both of them because they each play, in my opinion, complementary roles. And I'm thankful to both council members for bringing these. I'm thankful as well for Hart for elevating the conversation. I think a lot of times we focus on, if you feel so strongly about something, you should advocate for it. But at some point, you have to step back and look at whether you're focused on making a point or making actual progress. And if you look at the progress that's been made, we weren't talking about this 3 years ago in this body. We've had workshops on it. We've had a new model that needs to be fully assessed by McNabb and the administration that I think will be informative for an alternative response. And the progress that is hiding in plain sight is that we will likely have some type of alternative response in the near future. And I think that these two resolutions can cohabitate. So that's my view on these two items. And I would suggest that we make progress by pushing forth both of them.
Councilmember McKenzie? And I'll come back to Testerman.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I just want to say that I agree that there are points on both of these resolutions that I agree with. But I have a couple of points of clarification. If Resolution 1A were to be approved, it does not circumvent the subsequent resolutions.
Councilmember McKenzie, I'm not sure that I'm the right person to answer that question.
Law
Who are you? Yeah.
Maybe the law director?
Honestly, I'm not sure either, Councilmember McKenzie. They have some similarities to them, but they do have distinct differences. Councilmember Parker and Vice Mayor Roberto, this question for them to answer to that, that they probably think there are differences between the two.
I'd love to address that question if possible. There are really two sections of Roberto's resolution that I feel conflict with my resolution, and I believe it's the 11th and 12th whereases. It's actually one of the whereases Mr. Harrington brought up, which is about the need for a multi-jurisdictional effort and the need for cross-jurisdictional support. Based on the research that I've done, cities have especially started out and implemented pilot programs without making that determination about the scope, whether it's multi-jurisdictional or not. Some have started out as a regional project and they start out multi-jurisdictional and they move forward. But what I've proposed is one that's focused on the city of Knoxville specifically. And I'm concerned that if we define what is needed as having to be multi-jurisdictional, we miss an opportunity to be able to investigate what a smaller, local, very localized alternative response could look like and how it could benefit Knoxville.
Clarification. What I will say is I don't disagree with you as it relates to the city focus, but I do agree that we have to apply pressure at all levels of jurisdiction, because at the end of the day, that is what is required if we ever want to see the level of psychiatric hospitalization that unfortunately is needed. And so with all the energy that's brought to City Council, I hope that that energy also will be brought to County Commission and to the state, because they have a responsibility in this as well, and some accountability. I'd also like to, and I do think that, they should be engaged or at least invited to conversations as it relates to these topics, whether they come or take action, but I think it's good for them to see the support. I'd also like to ask, and I don't know if this is law director, if it's council Member Parker and Vice Mayor Roberto, is there an opportunity for us to work together, even through mediation, through the law director, to look at how we can combine these resolutions? It just feels that if we have two resolutions out there, that it's just kind of going to be a little counterproductive in a sense. And so, as Council Vice Mayor Roberto's does not include experiencing homelessness, which I do believe is very important to be addressed here as well. And so I'd like to pose that question, if there is, if you all would be open to mediation through the law director to say, how can we combine the things in both of them rather than having two resolutions that are out there?
Vice Mayor Roberto?
Thank you, and I appreciate the questions from Councilmember McKenzie. The first question you were talking about is this differential between the two, which Councilmember Parker identified. All of the programs that I've talked about, and every other program I've seen and when I've been talking to providers, all of them have support from the city, the county, and the state. None of them is a single action. So I think the delineation here is, one proposal is saying, let's just have the city do this. The other one is saying, let's continue to have cross-jurisdictional approach. That's what's been successful. That's what council asked when we did the joint workshop with the county and with the state. That's what, when I've talked to providers, they have all said the same thing. We have to go this route. Is it easy to just talk to one body? Sure, it's easy, but it's also easy for that not to be successful. The way that I see this being successful, it's critical that we have we continue our progress that we've made. So I can't negotiate on that piece because it will fail. And that's why I felt like I needed to bring this. The other piece is, what is intended for the alternative response team to respond to. I think it's going to be a community-based team that is trained to respond to issues like mental health crisis, substance abuse, and people who are experiencing homelessness. It doesn't say that in the resolution, but it definitely implies it, because everything I'm talking about is, low income or uninsured individuals, and that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a lot of people who are in a bad situation. That's what this is about. It's about people. And so, if people want to make sure it's spelled out that we say those different groups, that's fine. But that's the intention here. That's what I'm trying to do. But I appreciate the question.
I feel like I should.
Yeah, Ms.
ahead.
Parker, and then we'll have several other council members who've had their lights on a while. Go ahead, Ms. Parker, if you could.
I just
answer.
wanted to provide one clarification. My resolution does not suggest that the city will go it alone. My suggestion suggests that the city will create the table at which others will come for planning. Also, my resolution uplifts some other partnerships that the city has. One is, when we're talking about homelessness, one is VMC Street Outreach Team, which could be a very similar type of partnership where it is community-based. They do receive city support, but they also receive funding from other agencies. Receiving funding from other agencies, identifying where there are funding opportunities, is a much different situation than saying we have to have a program that includes the county and the state. That hampers us too much, in my opinion. Moving to, also I want to say quickly, the idea behind the task force was to explore all of these issues. So the purpose of the task force was to bring all of these voices into a room and determine what does the funding landscape look like? What level of collaboration is needed for this to be successful? Can it operate similar to a street outreach team, or does it need to operate more like a 911 dispatched mobile crisis center? That's an opportunity for us to toss all of these ideas around and come up with a more clear proposal. What we're doing through this process is trying to pull as much information as we have together to already define what type of alternative response program we want to pursue. And I just don't think we have gotten there as a city. I think we need space to further discuss what that looks like without, without mandating that has to be multi-jurisdictional, when that just may not even be possible in Knoxville.
Councilmember Ryder.
I feel like there's a lot of people talking past each other and deciding that we disagree when we agree on some things. I had that conversation with someone today about why not support this resolution, why not support that resolution. In the end of the conversation, I felt that the conversation was, we agree on more than we disagree on. And I feel like there's some paradigm issues of people working from different paradigms. So I think it's unfortunate it's come down to anger and blame. And I have a lot of questions, I have a lot of comments, and I'm really, really not sure where to start. I'm going to start with one of the points, and I'm going to go ahead and just say out loud, it doesn't matter what I say, there's going to be a contingent of people who've decided I'm wrong before I even start talking. No matter what I say, it's wrong. And you go ahead and laugh. I get it, because you're right there heckling me all day long, every day. Hey, and thanks when you came to my house and did it at my house, too. Come on back. My kids thought it was hilarious.
Okay. Members of the public, council's conducting business.
Apparently.
Ms. Ryder, you have the floor.
Yep.
Members of the audience, you may not disrupt a public meeting, or you may be asked to leave. Ms. Ryder, continue with your comments.
Cool, I'm wrong. Peace out. I'm going to keep going, though, okay? Thanks. I got 3.5 minutes, so we can do it this way, because that's clearly what you want to do.
Ms. Ryder, go ahead and
So,
share your...
I don't recall in any of my conversations with Hart, and I don't recall any of my colleagues saying they were opposed to alternative response. I recall having lots of conversation with Hart this spring and various members of Hart about funding and getting programming funding and getting programming funded and getting something in the budget. That's what I was anticipating this spring, this budget cycle. And instead it was a task force, okay, but it was the dollar figure that I had questions about for the staff or who was managing it or whatever. When we left the last council meeting after 2 hours of discussion, I was expecting edits to that resolution. Instead, at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night, I got an entirely different resolution that was about having a meeting in 2024. Then there's another resolution about bringing partners to the table to help fund an alternative response with no dictation of what that alternative response is. And we wouldn't be here in this point in this conversation and debating this 2 hours the last time we discussed it in a meeting and today without the efforts of Hart. And so you get full credit for that, of continuing the conversation and not being satisfied with the fact that we're just doing co-response. This community, many years ago, for people that were involved, we had the 10-year plan, which got very much sidetracked and I think had a poor name to start with, where there was an effort to do permanent supportive housing in different parts of the city. And I went to an incredibly, incredibly ugliest public meeting I've ever been to, where there were people who were like, you can't put that in our part of town, in our neighborhood. And that's when the 10-year plan got tanked. That was many years ago, and there are probably people in this room that were there and or knew about it or heard about it. And if you haven't, I'm glad to fill you in on details, and there's plenty in the media about it. We have come a long way from public, whether they're state officials or county officials, walking up to us, city elected officials, and saying, I saw people who are homeless. I saw people like this or like that in my neighborhood. What are you doing about it? What is the city doing about it? The city has spent a great amount of capacity building to get the county and the state to be partners, whether it's in funding or in other capacities. The county the county hired a social worker to help go out and do some response. The county has now hired a staff person to coordinate with our outreach coordinator. The county and the state have come up with money for this empath, which I think I heard in some of the comments, and maybe there's just a misunderstanding, that that's somehow new to this Resolution 11A. It's not. That money was approved, and the press releases are from 2022. We were just waiting on the people that were in the building to move out and get it started. There's opportunities to build partnerships from that or any other nonprofit around town. There's been a tremendous amount of effort to build partnerships and capacity with other partners who have a role in mental health response. Not that that necessarily means psychiatric incarceration, but in responding to people who are in crisis. I think that this is the path forward. Okay.
Well, you can turn your light on
No.
back after Ms. Testerman?
Thank you. First let me say, again, I think we all concur. I definitely, mental health is absolutely paramount. It is at the core of most of our city's most critical issues. So, I certainly think we all agree on that. And sadly, we don't have enough resources to address what we're facing with that. I do have a few questions. Going back in 11A, this resolution, and the $50,000 that is committed, I am curious about who would be charged with developing the business and service delivery plan that's referenced in that resolution.
Vice Mayor Roberto?
Well, it looked like Deputy Mayor Gill was about to answer that question.
Oh.
I can do it too, but go ahead.
Ms. Gill?
Sure, well, I'm happy to jump in because this $50,000 reference is in specific regard, Mayor, to the pledge that you made at the last discussion on May 30th. And so in describing that a little more fully, you'll notice the kind of, again, emphasis on the fact that we need to see other partners at the table. We anticipate that that $50,000 doesn't get us as far as we need to when it comes to the level of detail and professional analysis that would need to be done to design such a concept. And so we would be looking and expecting that other partners would match that with us. In just the last few weeks, as this conversation has continued to unfold and we've continued to talk to our existing partners, some of which have been mentioned, not only is there openness to exploring some concepts like that, but there's also been some opportunities mentioned in terms of where that additional funding may come from in the form of grants. But again, we want to emphasize that that is offered as a starting point, but it ought not be the end-all in terms of describing what kind of a foundational partnership would need to look like in order to do that analysis. Does that maybe help? And I'm happy to offer
Sure.
Vice Mayor a chance to chime in there as well.
And one, I understand, is it Leanne Hilliard, I think, here from Helen Ross?
No, she's,
Is anyone here from McNabb Center?
That was,
no.
Yeah.
We spoke with them and no, they're not able to be here tonight.
okay. Again, I have a lot of, I was told that she was going to be here. But again, I just have some questions. They're referenced in this resolution. I asked the same question when we talked about it last. And I really would just like to hear about their weigh-in on this and, where they stand.
I'm happy to paraphrase some of our recent conversations if you'd like me.
Ms. Gill, can you share, or Vice Mayor Roberto, if you've spoken to McNabb about this, you want to tell your colleagues what your conversations were like?
Thank you, Mayor. Since we had the charge from council at our retreat to have that joint workshop with all of these partners, the county and the state, I worked to get that organized. We had providers, I can't even think of how many providers we had. You all were here. To do that, we had, our state General Assembly colleagues as well as all of our county commissioners here. After that, I continued those conversations, talking about things that we need in our community. It was that collaboration that brings this resolution. I mean, the discussions I've had were, there's a level of detail in there that I don't possess that information without being out, going out and seeking it and having conversations with folks. I'm not going to say any one organization says they're going to support one thing or another, but this is coming from a place of having those discussions, and I'm really grateful for folks that have come here to say they're supportive of it, and I'm very grateful for my colleagues who are supportive of this as well.
Okay.
Ms. Testerman?
I've got more to say, but my time's out, so I'll put my light back on.
Okay, Councilmember Singh?
Thank you. I want to start with something that
If you could just speak closer into your microphone.
that Councilwoman Ryder was talking about. There were different resolutions coming through on different days, and I wasn't sure if Ms. Parker's resolutions were going to be coming. I didn't, it was just a bit confusing. And I saw 11A, and what I saw was a whole lot of things that I agreed with. These are things that we want. What I do have an issue with is I feel like it pushes the alternative response team or idea farther back. Like we have to wait for other things to happen before we start doing that. I think it's completely correct that we need a mental health facility. We need more money. We need more partners. But if we wait for that, we're pushing this back. The other question I have is about the co-responder idea team. Can someone speak to how that was created? Who was involved in that conversation? Were the city and the county and the state involved? Were we waiting for a place that we could take the people to that the co-responder team interacted with?
Ms. Gill?
Yes, and there may be other folks, maybe Chief Powell, I don't know if you have some of this history too, but I'll try to speak to what I can. So in particular, the concept of co-response had been one that was identified in, I believe it was a 2015 sequential intercept mapping process that really identified the BHUC, and out of those partnerships arose this kind of emerging concept that partners were seeing in other cities around co-response. And so, there was a active conversation, as I understand it, between KPD leadership as well as McNabb leadership to recognize a potential partnership. These are two partners who work together regularly on our crisis intervention training for officers, and that program has continued to become more robust. And the this idea of an emerging model that really was an opportunity to move a little more quickly on account of some of that legwork that had already been done and those partnerships that had already been formed. You'll recall, Council, that when we were in that season of regular workshops back in 2020, that really took forth this proposal of saying, hey, why don't we try it? And McNabb in particular being a provider who was willing to do this through a contract wherein they would provide the staff and overhead administrative support to a behavioral health clinician to ride along in the kind of equipment and foundation framework of a KPD model. And so,
Ms. Gill, because I have limited time.
So anyway, so we did the pilot and then we expanded it.
So we did not wait for the state or the county to add funds, and we did not wait to get a facility in place first.
I think we were building what we already had, and it was a specific contract, you'll recall, for $90,000 to be able to launch that program.
The other piece, I don't remember if we had a workshop on co-responder model. COVID has happened since then.
I think it was discussed in one of those workshops.
I know we had a discussion about it during a council meeting, but I don't believe we had a workshop.
Yeah, we did.
Mr. Smith says we did.
We did. There's a packet, and McNabb spoke.
Okay. All right. So that's good. Yeah, so I like all three resolutions. I think we can pass all three. I would just want to make an amendment about clarifying on 11A some, that we're not waiting for these two other pieces before we start investigating and doing the work of trying to figure out how to find partners to do it. That would be my request.
Vice Mayor Roberto.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, I appreciate the questions and the support for this. The intention of this resolution is not to push back alternative response at all, or to say that we're not going to move forward. It's about a path that does create success and where we can move forward. I have had quite some time now sitting with all of you and considering things and debating things fully and thoughtfully. And I have a lot of faith in each one of you. And I know that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So there is no issue from my perspective. We see an acute need in our community, and that's what this is addressing. It's saying we see an opportunity now to address these issues, just like you had said, that you agree with, these things that need to happen. They don't detract from anything. This is the way you complete the continuum of care. I think having all of this together, this entire package, is the way to go. Using leveraging these relationships with the county and the state, that's what we're going to have to do to have this be successful, like every other program that we've talked about. So it doesn't push it back at all. And I'm highlighting it because it's important. I think there is a vital role for alternative response. And so I just wanted to make sure that was clear so you didn't think that I'm trying to prioritize one over the other.
Councilmember Singh, I guess you still have.
Oh, do I still have time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or was that for Ms.? Oh, that was for Vice Mayor Roberto. Let me go to Mr. Thomas, and we can come back to you if you still have comments. Councilmember Thomas?
Yes, there's some information that I need, and I want some clarification. Is anybody here who would be a spokesman for HART? Maybe Ms. Conley or whoever could feel like you could act as a spokesman, or spokesperson, I should say. Now, HART, of course, is a major player, and then Helen Ross McNabb got in early on the alternative response, and as I said, when I supported that, I didn't preclude proposals that you're talking about, the alternative response. It's been a long night. Have you or your organization and Helen Ross McNabb got in the same room and actually talked all this out?
We have a meeting in 2 weeks.
But as of yet, you haven't done it.
I do want to say, though, that from the beginning of these conversations, we did talk with McNabb back in 2020.
Right.
And what we heard from them, from the higher-ups at McNabb, from multiple people, was they were not at all interested in alternative response. And we heard a very clear, not only are we not interested in it now, but we'll never be interested in it. Now, of course, things could have changed.
Where did you hear that from?
From, I think the CEO and one of their directors. So this idea that we haven't involved them in this process, it's because from the beginning they said they weren't interested in this. So that was truly not us saying we refuse to talk with McNabb. It was them saying we're doing co-response only, and we don't ever want to be involved in alternative response. Now we'll meet with them in a couple weeks. We'll see what they have to say.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to gather information because there's been a disconnect in my mind of what's going on here, and that's been the stumbling block, the main stumbling block for me about how to put these pieces together. And I think no matter whose fault it is, whether it's yours, groups, or Helen Ross McNabb, it's unfortunate, to say the least, that these two groups haven't gotten together a long time ago and sat in the same room and talked all this out. To me, that's what's hanging me up. Is Helen Ross McNabb. I got tremendous amount of respect for them. Their headquarters is in my district. I've seen their work for years. They have a track record that's impeccable, almost, if anybody is. I've got a lot of respect for Hart for bringing this, and my sympathies are with an alternative response team. What is puzzling to me, and the big stumbling block for me, is there hasn't been a dialogue where you two groups are talking. And speaking only for myself, that's what's hanging me up. I can't figure out which direction to go in, or split into two directions. So, you know, I'm not sure, to be honest about it, what position to take until two of the major players actually sit down and talk to each other. Now, it may come out that you can't agree on anything, but that's a piece of the puzzle that I need to know.
Sure. I just again want to say that McNabb kind of removed themselves from this conversation early on. They have not ever reached out to us. They don't show up here when we're having these conversations. And also, Hart is composed of all volunteers, whereas McNabb has a massive staff, right? So I think holding Hart to the same account as one of our largest organizations in this community is maybe a little unfair when we've put in hundreds, if not thousands, of unpaid hours the past 3 years.
Yeah, and you absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all. I've seen it, and so I don't have a problem with that. But it doesn't take a lot of hours for two groups to sit down and get in the same room.
Well, I also want to say our original
Now, if
idea
it's
of
their fault, or if they're not giving you that opportunity, that's not on you. I'm just trying to get information. That's all I'm trying to do.
I also just want to add our original idea of the task force is that all of these people would be at a table, including McNabb. So like that's our desire. That's the idea that we originally supported, is we want people to all be able to come together at one table. And that's really hard to organize without something formal like a task force.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, your time is up for the moment. Councilmember Testerman?
So I want to piggyback on what Councilmember Thomas said, because I remember distinctly at the last council meeting that that Hart was not talking to Helen Ross because of their involvement in the co-responder model, because of the law enforcement affiliation. And so, you know, that bothered me again, because Helen Ross is the obvious organization to be a part of this solution. And I go back to, you know, the co-responder model as well. You know, what is our plan to continue investing in that? Would certainly rather see funding allocated to that, because we've started it and certainly don't want to abandon it. And it's still in its infancy and needs to be far more robust to be completely effective. And as well, you know, I'm open to alternative response teams, but I'm also not supportive at the expense of law enforcement, and taking funding from law enforcement to potentially fund an ART. And I just am, again, I'm fact finding, because again, I would like to know other cities that have done alternative response teams, done it well, but it's been a completely separate line item that hasn't impeded on public safety dollars. So again, those are some, and I guess what I heard from Hart earlier in talking, and I feel like Councilmember Smith brought this up at the last meeting as well, is, you know, we're not in the business of providing direct health care. You know, it was said earlier that they felt very confident that they could staff it, that those staffing issues were there. And again, you know, don't disagree. You've got VMC, Street Outreach, you've got other organizations that are doing community-based outreach. So again, the collaboration of different organizations, and you know, what precludes Hart from forming a 501c3, raising funds, staffing, and implementing an alternative response team themselves and in collaboration with other organizations that they see fit. You know, I go back to resources, and there are not going to be any more resources available than are now. I mean, obviously, we want to bolster those. So I'm trying to, again, better understand, you know, some of the intricacies on what that model is. And I'm just hearing bits and pieces, and I feel like if it's been talked about for 3 years, there would be a little more structure on what it looks like. And I guess I'm just not hearing it. And to Councilmember Thomas's point, some crucial conversations haven't even been had with the experts in this field, in this community.
Thank you. I guess, was Councilmember Smith, Councilmember McKenzie?
Thank you, Mayor. This question's for Chief Noel. Chief Noel, could you remind us of the co-responder team days and hours?
Yes, ma'am. So our co-responder team, we work from about 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week when fully staffed. Fully staffed is 4 police officers and 4 clinicians working together. Right now, Helen Ross McNabb only has 2 clinicians hired for the co-response team. I've been informed that they have just hired a 3rd employee recently who's in training, who will be onboarded and start responding to calls around July 9th. And they have a 4th employee in the pipeline to come on staff right now that will be hired soon.
Also, what happens if after 11 p.m. A call comes in and someone has a family member who's having a mental health crisis and being aggressive? What happens?
Sure. You know, and before I answer that, my long-term goal would be to have the co-response team fully staffed with about 12 teams working in each district around the clock. So we would always have them available. But if our co-responder team is not available, either if they're on another call, if someone is, if someone is not available, we have crisis intervention team trained officers, CIT officers that are all available now. EMS is available. The fire department has medics that are CIT certified as well. And we would get one of our CIT officers out there to handle that call.
Can you confirm whether or not there's any questions that are asked that would indicate some indicators prior to dispatch?
Sure. So our 911 team at E911, they have a series of protocol questions they ask when people call 911, and it varies based upon the incident. But if someone is calling with about a mental incident or a mental crisis, they'll ask questions about whether they believe they're a danger to themselves or others, whether they have access to the firearm, questions like that. They check questions right off a checklist.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to kind of follow up on comments from earlier. I think Vice Mayor's resolution gives a comprehensive view of reality of what we have to achieve together with the entire community. There's a session involved in that. How many ever sessions it takes, I don't know, but everybody that has to be at the table is in that resolution. I think Councilman Parker's resolution, at least 11C, has a specific focus on alternative response and puts that out there at a future date that we can pursue. I think that my recommendation would be that we pass both and that we use the opportunity for the next few months for a reset where everybody can come open-minded to work with other organizations. Everyone is welcomed into any of those conversations, and that there be a possible path for learning from one another for a future alternative response program. But to me, the future is down that path, and there's an opportunity here to reset and collaborate in an earnest way. That's my final 2 cents.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going back a few comments to the conversation with Deputy to the Mayor, Aaron Gill. But this conversation about how there are potential partners in the community who've already expressed interest in the last few weeks. This is exactly why this proposal was brought forward. This is exactly why a task force was called for. For the last 3 years, there's been confusion and aggravation and frustration in the community about whether the city of Knoxville leadership, city council, support an alternative response team or not, and if we're willing to put in the work to help our city realize one. Just in the last 4 weeks, we have absolutely gotten on the same page that we are in support of alternative response. That is major. That gives potential partners, potential funders a heads up. I don't know if you all received calls. I received calls today especially, but over the last week, from cities all across the country wanting to support Knoxville in implementing alternative response. Sending me reports, sending me ideas for where to find money. As soon as we express our support of this, additional support comes. So already we've achieved the #1 goal of bringing this resolution forward was getting us all on the same page so that we could attract additional funding and partners to this effort. And I just wanted to, clarify that this, in my opinion, was to begin a conversation. I never imagined or hoped or planned to bring a fully fleshed out proposal for how we would adopt alternative response in the city of Knoxville. My proposal was to start a conversation and bring all of the players to the table to see what is possible in our city. What I've seen in other cities is an initial investment made by the city to get something started. The city may even fund a pilot program, and then additional funding is more accessible once we have all of that data and we can show how successful alternative response can be in Knoxville. So I don't know what the level of commitment needs to be from the city of Knoxville moving forward, but I just wanted to give you all a heads up that where I've seen cities successfully adopt an alternative response program, there is an initial investment by the city, but additional partners and additional funding definitely will follow after that. I would prefer to see an amendment to the resolution. I think that it will help us with clarity moving forward about some of those next steps. I would love to still see a task force come out of this process, perhaps after a few months of further research and study, and then a public hearing. But even if we don't get the amendments, because I'm not sure where we're at with that, I feel confident that the community will continue to show up and continue to tell us what they need and continue to work towards the program that we need in this city. And if that means the city taking the lead because other agencies are dragging their feet, then that's what we have to do. Because I really believe in this program. I've seen not only from data from other cities, but also hearing the stories from community members here in Knoxville. I truly believe that this can have a real benefit. Parents who've called me since this resolution has been introduced and said, I have a child who has a substance use issue. I need a number to call for help. I do not feel comfortable calling 911 as of now. Other examples of people who've called me and said, we need another option. And it kind of surprises me, the background and demographics, it's all over the board, y'all. It's all over the board. So I hope that we can reach some consensus tonight and move the conversation about alternative response forward in Knoxville.
Vice Mayor Roberta.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that we have so many people here with us tonight, but also watching at home, who are definitely supportive of what we're talking about with alternative response, with the need for these hospitalization unit or units in our community. And that's what this resolution is about. And there is a lot of time where there's a lot of division and a lot of difference of opinion from a lot of people, but there's not a lot of that here tonight. That's not what council members are talking about. When I'm hearing input, that's not what's going on. That's not what this resolution is about. I wanted to also mention, there's discussion about some, caution about, hey, should we involve other partners, which we've done in the past, and successfully, we've done that. That, maybe they're not going to come to the table. And I just haven't gotten a chance to mention this yet, but I've been in discussions with County Commission Chair Durrett, and they're ready to go. They want to have a workshop on August 3rd on these topics, because I've shared with them what's going on here. So we don't have to wait to do anything else. We're ready to move and have a very full discussion about all of this. We don't have to wait any longer. And that's why I ultimately brought this. This needs to happen. We need to move this forward. And this is the path to get it done. And I definitely invite and have always intended to invite Hart to come and participate in that joint workshop, just like everyone else needs to. We need to have all those partners come in and have that discussion. And I hope that we can pass this unanimously, because that statement is what gets this done. It inspires our providers to apply for grants that then can fund what we're talking about, and we can then communicate in one voice, which is what I was advocating for 4 weeks ago. In one voice, we want to do this, and then come to that table. Let's have that discussion. And that's what really needs to happen tonight. Let's move this forward. Let's get this done. Let's get it done now. And then we can have more conversations about, if there's other things that we need to be doing as we're going there. But I see an opportunity here, and I'm just not willing to sit and not do anything about it when I know that we can pass something unanimously tonight, and I hope we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Singh.
Thank you. I also want this to pass unanimously. So I have a couple amendments I'd like to make, and I'm trying to figure out, it's in the last three whereases. Yes, Resolution A. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out the wording. It says, it doesn't sound like it's conditional. I want to remove anything that's conditional that we have to begin only after there is other agencies involved, other governments involved. So.
I think you're looking at, whereas Knoxville City Council recognizes that to be successful, such a program requires cross-jurisdictional cooperation and support, a sustainable
right, actually
funding
the
model.
one above it.
Okay.
Knoxville City Council supports a multi-jurisdictional effort to explore how an alternative program could serve. So I'd just like it to say supports an effort to explore. And in the next one,
It does say that. It says Knoxville City Council supports a multi-jurisdictional effort to explore how an alternative response program could serve the greater Knoxville community with rapid on-site crisis response that's integrated with E911 dispatch.
no, I'm saying remove the words multi-jurisdictional from that one. That we support an effort. It may end up being multi-jurisdictional, but right now we're just supporting the effort.
I don't have a problem with doing that, especially if we leave the next paragraph alone. The approach that is going to work is going to be multi-jurisdictional. If we just want to say a blanket, we support an effort to doing this, I don't have a problem with that amendment. I say that's a friendly amendment.
Okay, so I'll compromise with you. Recognizes that we can recognize that a successful program would be best with cross-jurisdictional, but we're not waiting for that to happen before we start exploring.
I don't want to wait at all, which is why I'm bringing this and why I've already been working on trying to get a workshop set up on August 3rd.
Okay. I just had another suggestion on that one. and encourages a multi-jurisdictional support instead of that to be successful.
Okay, so it's going to say Knoxville City Council recognizes,
That jurisdictional cooperation and support would be helpful. Actually, let's leave that one alone and go to the upper one. I'm sorry.
that's okay. Well, that's what it's like when we're,
Right.
doing this in a meeting.
I think it sends us in the right direction if, whereas Knoxville City Council supports an effort to explore how an alternative response program could serve the greater Knoxville community with rapid on-site crisis response that's integrated with E911. So it's just removing those two words, the multi-jurisdictional, from that. We can leave it in other places. Just to me, this feels like we're not waiting for that to happen before we put an effort forward.
And I don't have any problem with that. Like I said, I think that's a friendly amendment.
Councilmember Singh, just so you know, I think that multi-jurisdictional is a really important component to the success of this. This, like once upon a time, mobile crisis unit was launched, and that was a multi-jurisdictional effort. Anything that has to do with 911. Excuse me, please do not interrupt from the audience. You're not allowed to interrupt the business of the city, or we will ask you to leave. So I just think that, Vice Mayor Roberto put that language in because that's what is important to, to the success of this. The city going alone, it's different from the co-response team because, it was a law enforcement partner response and we know how to do that. This requires integration with the ambulance and the 911 and all the health department and everything else.
We can discuss this.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I make the motion, put the motion forward that this pass, but remove just those two words, multi-jurisdictional.
In the third whereas from the bottom.
Yes.
Yes, and I would second that motion, and I appreciate your collaboration on this. Thank you. We'll change the word a to and.
I'm sorry, there's been a motion to amend, it's been made and seconded.
So we should vote on that?
Does everyone understand what the amendment is? Because I'm not sure I do.
I think it
Yeah.
says, it's going to say Knoxville City Council supports an effort to
Yes.
explore how an alternative response program could serve the greater Knoxville community with rapid on-site crisis response that is integrated in E911 dispatch. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, that's not
Can you
saying
reread that?
would be-
Could you
That's
read that
not saying
again?
that a multi-jurisdictional would not be a good idea.
So it's going to,
Right.
so it'll say, whereas Knoxville City Council supports an effort to explore how an alternative response program could serve the greater Knoxville community with rapid on-site crisis response that is integrated with E911 dispatch.
Yes.
And that's on the fly.
It's hard to do this in real time.
It feels like some of our meetings from several years back.
Mr. Johnson, would you care to repeat the motion?
So the motion that I have is to simply strike out the words multi-jurisdictional.
Change A to and.
Yes.
Thank you, Will.
Councilmember Fugit, speaking on the amendment.
I have a question. I think I understood, and Councilwoman Singh, if I'm wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me. I think your motion was that take it out there, but leave it in the next whereas?
That's my compromise.
Okay,
We're still
because,
going towards that.
because I think that, is important for us to, I appreciate you making that compromise. Because it says, we also are acknowledging that we think it will work best that way, but we're willing to start exploring
Exactly.
now. I think that was your intent.
Exactly.
Let's vote.
Any further questions or comments on this amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment passes. Now back to the original motion. as amended. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, you want to go through B and C, or do we want to take a recess, go through it? Okay, let's do B and C.
11B is a resolution recognizing the need for additional trauma-informed services to address mental health, substance use, and homelessness in the city of Knoxville, and to express the intent of council to create an alternative response team task force to develop and propose a plan to pilot the strategic implementation of alternative response in the city of Knoxville.
I'm going to move to withdraw.
Motions been made to withdraw has been made and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion, well, if it's being withdrawn, then we can move to the same, okay. All those, all those in favor of the motion to withdraw, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C.
11C is a resolution recognizing the need for additional trauma-informed services to address mental health, substance use, and homelessness, such as 911 Dispatched Alternative Response Program, and setting a date for a public hearing on the issue of alternative response.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. There are some people who signed up to speak in favor of this. I'll call on the first three per council's rules. This is these. First person signed up to speak in favor of 11C is Rick Roach. Not here. Second person is Tina Sparks. She's not here? Okay. Third person is Alex Riffald. Ms. Riffald, you can come to the podium.
Hi, good evening. Alex Riffwald, 5522 Dogwood Road. I am here to voice my support for Resolution 11C, which was written by Councilwoman Amelia Parker in collaboration with Knoxville Heart. When Council voted to postpone Parker's task force resolution last month, our goal was to find a resolution that would receive consensus. We've made some concessions, like removing the entire task force from the resolution. The amount of collaboration and compromise we've been willing to do has been pretty high. This resolution was created with the feedback we heard from other council members. If this resolution does not pass, it's really hard to imagine that members of Knoxville Heart will feel like collaborating and compromising as much as we have again. I know that's hard to hear, but just imagine the situation that we're in where everyone knew that Amelia's resolution was coming when we did the postponement. But we are very heartened to see that alternative response garners such community and council support. Knoxville really wants alternative response, and that's really what I get from these meetings and what I really appreciate. Resolution 11C would help our community members feel heard, respected, and a part of the process by giving key groups a seat at the table. Resolution 11C encourages the city of Knoxville to explore the feasibility of alternative response. This is the process that the majority of council endorsed at our meeting in May. Resolution 11C expresses its intent to co-host with Knox County Commission a joint workshop to review the findings of the sequential intercept mapping exercise and other relevant data as requested by Vice Mayor Roberto. Resolution 11C reaffirms City Council's commitment to supporting a continued increase in the percentage of the city budget dedicated to addressing the root causes of societal ills and advancing trauma-informed services as expressed in Resolution 118-2021 introduced by Councilwoman Singh. Resolution 11C commits to a public hearing in January of next year as requested by the community. Resolution 11C is the right first step in our journey to implementing an alternative response program that will save lives. It is made through collaboration and compromise. Resolution 11C is reimagining public safety. Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak in favor of this is Elizabeth Johnson. Ms. Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Johnson, and I live on Granger Avenue. And I'm here tonight as a resident of District 4 and also as a social scientist who does community-engaged research and who studies how contact with the criminal legal system affects children and families. As I shared at the last council meeting, I think it's essential for us to expand how we think about safety and how we respond to people in crisis. And I'm really heartened, no pun intended, to hear that so many members of the council feel similarly. It feels really good to have this common ground. I'm back tonight to join others in underscoring the critical importance of community voices and lived expertise in the process of developing an alternative response program. In a recent article on alternative response programs that was published in one of the most highly regarded public health journals, an interdisciplinary group of scholars noted that one, if not the most important strategy for doing this work, is to directly involve impacted communities in program development, implementation, oversight, and evaluation. In other words, it's essential for the council and any others who are involved in this effort to very deliberately create and then hold spaces for input from individuals who've been affected by traditional responses and who stand to benefit from alternative approaches. For this work to work, members of the community need to feel connected and respected and valued at all stages of this process, starting now as we set the intentions for it. Supporting Resolution 11C and creating a pathway for meaningful community engagement would go a long way towards building the foundation of mutual respect that will be essential for ensuring the success of an alternative response program in Knoxville. Thank you.
Next person signed up to speak is Tyler Givens.
Hey, I made it. Good evening. Tyler Givens. I live in Knoxville. Just quickly, Janet, alternative response saves police time and money. It does not defund police. They don't have the manpower to respond to auto accidents, and alternative response would be helping them with that. I just want to say, as Tommy said, we should advocate for solutions. And like Gwen said, we have to apply some pressure or nothing will get done. After 3 years of community activists researching and consulting with experts, after 3 years of community activists speaking and writing to council members and the mayor, after 3 years of people who are doing the work, caring for the castaways of our society, begging for the city to help, now that the pressure is on, now that the pressure has come to the head, a coalition led by Andrew Roberto wants to co-opt this momentum to protect the status quo. The reason we are here now is because you all got this wrong with the co-responder model. This time, you need to open your ears and listen. Roberto's resolution is just a way to keep doing what you're already doing and to be able to blame the county and the state for the lack of proper public services in Knoxville like you often do. That is why India broke the debate rules to insist that the phrase multi-jurisdictional stays in the resolution. Because many of you claim to be allies of LGBTQ plus people, but Glenn Jacobs is out there spouting bigoted rhetoric, and you want us to depend on his government to be a full partner in our alternative response team. We all know you love working with the county when it comes to enriching your friends, but even you all should be able to see that this is not a proper partner for this relationship. Also, Helen Ross McNabb works for the city and at the pleasure of her people, not the other way around. No one from McNabb was even here tonight. A private entity should not dictate how the people's government handles community members in crisis. The people should decide through their representatives. But y'all are not doing a good job of representing us. You're doing a fantastic job of representing Helen Ross McNabb, even though they decided not to show up. Y'all paid McNabb for a sequential intercept model study, and then you sat on it until the community and the troublemaker on the council actually used the results to come up with a plan. So now you want to sit down with the county and discuss. The data probably throws our failures right back in our faces, but you want someone to share that blame with. You want to be able to throw up your hands and blame Glenn Jacobs and Bill Lee when alternative response fails to materialize. Alternative response is less costly than inpatient care. I guess that also means maybe it's less profitable. This resolution doesn't dissemble. It lays out the issues with facts and data in the preamble. It proposes a path to a solution, and it lays out some funding to do so. And most importantly, it directly addresses the issue of houselessness that has exploded under this mayor's administration. The vice mayor had plenty of opportunity to provide input on the revised draft. But in this resolution, there's no room to blame anybody else if the program fails to launch. A few weeks ago, y'all didn't like the original resolution, and the Hart members quickly went to work updating the resolution to address the issues you raised about structure and funding and partnering with existing city partners. And the revised resolution, which you all had a chance to provide input on, addresses these issues, but it doesn't cut out the unhoused. So I guess y'all couldn't support it. Several of you have asked a bunch of questions that the public speakers already answered the first time around if you were paying attention, but let me answer a few of them briefly. How many co-response calls could the alternative response team handle? All of them. The co-response team has said that they haven't had to use force on any of their calls. And how will we pay for it? As I said earlier, it pays for itself in savings. And this was addressed by somebody else too, but what kind of inpatient facilities would be needed? The whole point of alternative response is that you don't have to take people to an inpatient facility and use that hospitalization or arrest folks and take them to jail. It's difficult for me to wrap my head around the way this council operates sometimes. I can't tell if y'all just want to prevent any protections and support for the unhoused, or if you're just petty and you don't like it when the community points out your mistakes. That's right. Thank you.
Okay, council members, that concludes the three public speakers on this. Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mayor. I will not take all of my time. I hope that we have reached a consensus on the last agenda item. And you all can see the differences between the two resolutions. This resolution sets the date for a public hearing, but otherwise is pretty much in alignment with Vice Mayor Roberto's resolution. It also highlights some of the partnerships that we have in the community around street outreach and other services. But other than that, it's pretty much in alignment with the Vice Mayor's resolution, sets a public hearing, and I hope I have your support on this resolution.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes. As I mentioned in some of my comments, an essential piece of information about a dialogue between Helen Ross McNabb and Hart hasn't occurred yet. I think that was something that was necessary for me to have some clarity about how a resolution like this should be made or crafted. And because that conversation hasn't happened yet, for whatever reason, I am not going to vote either yay or nay. I'm going to abstain. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Fugit?
I just have a clarifying question, and I'm sorry I can't remember. I know this resolution talks about the mayor's pledge of $50,000. I believe.
It was a pledge to match.
To match 50,000. Match 50,000. Was that also in I can't remember. Yes.
So it is, and a lot of the same language that's in A is repeated in C. But if I remember correctly, there are differences in the wording for the $50,000 that we just passed unanimously versus what's in this resolution.
That's not my understanding.
Ms. Fugit?
I'm just trying to figure out if you combine both resolutions, is that $100,000 that has to be matched, or is it the same 50,000?
Ms. Gill, do you have some
Sure, I'm happy
thoughts?
to provide some clarity. So I think the matching language, which is really important to us as kind of the administration to say we are willing to put some money on the table, that is important that it is matched. So I do see it in both, so I think that was correctly copied over. I think one of the differences that is related to funding is around a reaffirmation of a commitment to support a continued increase in the percentage of the city budget dedicated to addressing the root causes of societal ills and advancing trauma-informed services as expressed in Resolution 118-2021. I don't know off the top of my head what that resolution is. Ms. Parker, maybe you can speak to that. But I'll take this point just to emphasize the importance as we enter a conversation around this to understand that, part of my role is to understand the complexity and the constraints of what we do with our city taxpayer funds, and recognizing that, I live in the city, I pay my city taxes, I pay my county taxes, and I support the state sales tax. And so in understanding the importance of cross-jurisdictional funding, that the constraints of our city budget are such that we need to acknowledge that any new program has to be in partnership with those additional funding streams to be successful. And I think we've hit on that point quite a bit already, but I want to emphasize the importance of that as an expectation as we enter any type of conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Any other questions or comments by council members? Councilmember Singh.
Yes, Councilmember Parker, can you elaborate on the community meeting? What do you imagine the structure to be? Is that something that can happen at the, when we have a city-county workshop? Or do you want something separate? What's your idea?
We have a little bit of guidance in our code of ordinances around public hearings, but it would be a public hearing, and the date is suggested in the resolution. I have a start time of 6:30, which is a little later than we're used to, but the idea being that it's that it will accommodate a broad portion of our community to be able to participate in that public hearing, but it would be an opportunity for those who are who see a benefit of alternative response, and also those who would be opposed to an alternative response, an opportunity to come forward in a forum and share their arguments for why and how they feel the city should move forward with alternative response or not. But it would be separate from a workshop.
Any more questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Oh, one abstention.
Two abstentions.
Okay. Two abstentions. Okay. Next item.
11D is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a lease agreement with Bogani Properties to for lease of space within the Emporium building located at 100 South Gay Street and 110 South Gay Street at an annual rental cost not to exceed $498,294.14 in this first year.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Council members, I just want to point out this is yet another example of how we support the arts. Excuse me, you're interrupting the business of the council. If you want to talk, go out the lobby. Anyhow, we know that finding affordable space for artists to work and display their wares is a big challenge, and that's why this agenda item helps support and continues the city's long support of the art space at the Emporium. This is 28,000 square foot location. I'm sure you've all been there. It houses galleries. It's home for the Arts and Cultural Alliance. I believe Lisa Zenny, I'm not sure if she's still here. Oh, there she is. Well, just want to commend Lisa and your team for being such a strong coordinating and effective influence for promoting the arts in our community. The arts, people come here for jobs or education, but they stay for the culture and quality of life. And the Knoxville Arts and Cultural Alliance is a big part of that. So I wanted to thank her. And their offices, of course, are in that Emporium as well. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11E is a resolution to effect annexation of a parcel of land situated in the 9th Civil District of Knox County, Tennessee, to be within Ward 25, City Block 25916 of the City of Knoxville, Tennessee, abutting the eastern right-of-way of Dresser Road, being approximately 5.29 acres, known as all of Tax Map 122, Insert O, Group J, Parcel 00201, this day known as 2920 Dresser Road, and to approve a plan of service for said area.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11F is a resolution to effect annexation of a parcel of land situated in the 6th Civil District of Knox County, Tennessee, to be within Ward 47, City Block 47665 of the City of Knoxville, Tennessee, abutting the eastern right-of-way of Sabre Drive, being approximately .64 acres, known as all of Tax Map 120, Insert N, Group D, Parcel 03100, known this day as 7624 Sabre Drive, and to approve a plan of service for said area.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Vice Mayor Roberta?
Just a quick welcome to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11G is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Superior Pavement Marking Incorporated for the 2023 pedestrian and bicycle pavement marking project for an amount not to exceed $206,620.75.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11H is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Sanders Pace Architecture LLC to provide professional architectural design services for the outdoor Knoxville Adventure Center re-roofing project for an amount not to exceed $41,400.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11I is a resolution authorizing the mayor to amend the contract with Henley Roofing Company for the arson investigation building re-roof project, increasing the contract amount by $32,618 for a new contract total of $171,318.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11J is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Kimley Horn and Associates Incorporated to provide grant writing services for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program for an amount not to exceed $34,898.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve and seconded. Council members, this is part of the Vision Zero goal that you all unanimously endorsed that goal to eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries on Knoxville streets, and items J and K work to advance that public safety goal and also connectivity, sustainable and equitable mobility. So thank you for the support of that Vision Zero goal. I want to thank Brian Blackman and the entire Vision Zero steering committee who helped get us to that point where our committee can put forth a strong proposal for this federal opportunity. And also, Mr. Evans wanted to assure all of us that is using current budget on, well, that's the next item, but these J and K items go hand in hand. So thank you for your support. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11K is a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for and, if awarded, accept a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant from the United States Department of Transportation in the amount of $10 million with a local match of $2 million to assist the city in its efforts to eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries on city streets.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11L is a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept a grant from the Hartford in the amount of $10,000, which will be used for the purchase of educational materials to teach Knoxville's children about fire safety and prevention.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11M is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a sub-grantee agreement with Volunteer Ministry Center to provide an amount not to exceed $32,564 in HUD Emergency Solutions Grant funds and $39,245 in homeless general funds for a total contract amount not to exceed $71,809 for the provision of rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention services.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11N is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with the Knoxville Leadership Foundation to provide an amount not to exceed $60,000 in 2023-2024 homeless general funds to provide homelessness prevention services through its Compassion Coalition program.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11O is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a subgrantee agreement with the Knox County Community Action Committee to provide an amount not to exceed $105,608 in HUD Emergency Solution Grants funds for the provision of rapid rehousing services through the Homeward Bound program.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? I want to thank the various providers on these agenda items for being here in case there are questions. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11P is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a subgrantee agreement with the Knox County Community Action Committee to provide an amount not to exceed $60,000 in CARES Act Supplemental Community Development Block Grant funding to support its Homeward Bound program.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11Q is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a second amendment to agreement number C-22-0147 with the Knox County Community Action Committee to extend the term and to provide an additional amount not to exceed $1,300,000 to provide transportation that meets the needs of residents in responding to and recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic for a period ending September 30, 2024.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank CAC for the role that you play in our transportation in our community, particularly as part of CAT Reimagined and the changes. We won't be able to support everybody in our community without you. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas?
Yeah, just a quick echo to that. Y'all provide services where the gaps are apparent. And CAT does a wonderful job, but there's places that they can't go, and you guys do. So just want to know that you're really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11R is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute any and all documents necessary to apply for a grant award of $65,000 with no required local match from YWCA of Knoxville and the Tennessee Valley as a subaward of the United States Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women Firearms Technical Assistance Project Pilot Sites